Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to rank all the X-Men movies. This is all based on my own subjective personal view, my pure enjoyment out of all the movies, and also I judge movies based on rewatchability, how much I would want to rewatch any of these movies if I had to pick one right now, and also how much can we talk about the movies afterward, how much stuff there is to debate about the movie, to talk about the movie, but most of all just my overall enjoyment of the movie, how much fun I had watching it. So that's how I will rank these movies, and in my opinion the very best X-Men movie is Days of Future Past. Just overall it was the most entertaining one, it was the most science fiction-y one because it had time travel, it had robots, it had so many cool mutants, that chick who opens the wormholes, that was so cool looking, Quicksilver moving fast and we see everything from his perspective, that was a brilliant scene. So many very good scenes, and also that whole setup of the future was so cool, that dystopian wasteland in the future with those scary sentinels, they actually managed to make them scary, and it was very similar to the Terminator franchise, and it's really well done. Like, this could be a good Terminator movie, that whole part in the future, that's how a Terminator movie should be done in my opinion. So this was just such a good and fun movie in so many ways, and it had both the old cast and the new cast, so a whole bunch of good actors. Wolverine is the main character. So this movie really had it all. It was not perfect, it had a few flaws, but overall it was the most fun movie, and also it did have some interesting elements such as a morality tale, the whole fight over Mystique's soul, trying to convince Mystique not to do something bad because the whole future depends on it. And also this was a period piece because so much of the movie was in the 60s, in the past, and so it just was so good in so many ways. So that's why this movie, in my opinion, is the very best X-Men movie. And also I really liked how this movie tried to fix a lot of the continuity issues created by the other movies, because the X-Men series of movies was so bad with continuity, like every new movie would ignore a lot of things from the previous movies, they didn't pay attention to the details, and yet this movie actually tried to bridge and to fix a lot of those issues, not all of them, but it did manage to fix a lot of the continuity problems, and so I really appreciated that. As a perfectionist myself, I love everything to be tied neatly, and this movie tried to do it. Not in everything, but in a lot of ways, it managed to fix the mess created by the other movies. And so, in my opinion, this is the very best X-Men movie. And in second place, I would put X-Men 2, X-Men United. It had a lot of very good special effects, very good action, and characters you care about, so you care about what's happened to them, you care about the stakes of it all. It was really epic. And it had so many cool scenes, like, Magneto escaping from prison. It was interesting, the whole thing in the end with Xavier being manipulated and he sees a fake reality, and all that stuff was really interesting to think about. It was just the whole atmosphere of the movie. It had a great villain, a few villains, and all the characters get something to do. They're all using their powers, they're working as a team effort. And it had some scenes about the whole issue of discrimination and bigotry and all that stuff, which is part of what makes X-Men interesting, the way that humanity views them as freaks and all of that. And we had that political subplot of Stryker manipulating the president because he wants a war with the mutants, and he commits a false flag attack to blame the mutants for what he's doing, and the whole thing of wanting to commit genocide, and then Magneto also wants to. That's a small flaw in the movie, that Magneto was kind of too evil in the end. He wanted to do the same thing like as Stryker did, so that kind of ruins the character of Magneto because he was never a black and white villain. So that's a small flaw in this movie, but other than that, it's a near perfect film, so that's why it's in second place. And in third place, I was thinking of putting X-Men First Class because it is a very good movie in many ways, but it has so many flaws. It had a lot of silly mutants, like that butterfly chick, and also the ending was rushed and kind of silly. So it was a very good movie, but it had a few major flaws which brings it down, and that's why I would put X-Men 1 as the third place, because X-Men 1 also a near perfect X-Men movie, perfectly cast. I loved all the actors in their roles, I loved the story, again with the political thing about discrimination against the mutants, the racism. It explored so many of these issues in a very interesting way, and the whole plan by Magneto was a neat plan. Again, he's not an all-evil character, he just wants to turn the leaders of humanity to mutants so that they'll be sympathetic toward the mutants, so that's kind of makes sense. In a way, he simply didn't know that it will kill them, so he wasn't totally evil. He's a very nice villain. Nice in the sense that he's thinking he's doing the right thing. So, and there's that ideological clash between him and Xavier. And again, they use all the characters, they develop all of them, well, almost all of them. I guess Cyclops was never properly developed in any of these movies, so he was always kind of a sidekick. And Wolverine gets most of the attention, but still, everything was awesome. So I really loved the first X-Men movie. Not perfect, it had a few silly things as well, like that mutant toad with the long tongue, that was a little bit too cartoony maybe, and Storm had some pretty bad lines, but overall this was a very, very nice movie, and that's why I'm putting it as a third place. And after that I'm putting X-Men First Class. It had a whole bunch of very good scenes, it had an interesting story, very good characters and actors, very good special effects. I love the whole epic story. I love the plot of the villain to try to cause nuclear war deliberately and all of that. That was fun also. It had a lot of emotional scenes, it had funny scenes, it had great action scenes. So a very good movie overall, but it did have some major flaws. It had some silly moments which kind of destroyed the realism of the movie. A few silly mutants which I didn't buy, like the butterfly chick. And the ending was just too rushed. So your best friend Charles just gets hit by a bullet by your fault, and then suddenly you make a speech about wanting to be Magneto and all of that. So the ending, it was good cinematically, but it was story-wise and character-wise, it was a little bit too rushed. Like they tried to cram in too many things too quickly without a proper setup. And it also started creating the continuity issues I mentioned, such as, in X-Men 1 and 2, they said that Eric helped Charles build Cerebro, and yet in this movie, they don't show us how they built Cerebro, and so that's a continuity mistake. Charles said that he met him when he was 17, and yet they are both older here, and so this movie kind of created continuity issues, which I guess it was kind of a reboot. They planned it as a reboot, not really a direct prequel, and yet later they did decide to make it a prequel, so that begs the question, how do you explain all these contradictions? And I'm talking about the ones which cannot be fixed by the whole time travel thing with Days of Future Past. And so that annoyed me a little bit. So that's why overall I'm putting it after X-Men 1. After that I'm putting Logan, which was a very good movie on itself. However, I'm not sure it's a good X-Men movie, and it's not a good conclusion to the X-Men story, because I really love the ending of Days of Future Past, that happy ending of everyone being in the right place as the X-Men. That could have been a great send-off to the whole franchise, and yet they kind of messed it up in Logan by saying that everybody are dead, and it's a whole depressing movie, which is a good movie, don't get me wrong, it's a very good movie. However, because of that depressed tone and because of all that darkness of everybody dying and a sad ending, all the mutants are dead, like it's all very depressing. And so in my opinion it kind of damages the rewatchability of it. It makes me depressed, so I wouldn't want to watch this movie too often, and it kind of destroys the good ending of Days of Future Past. And so that's why I'm putting it as number 5, even though it's a good movie on its own. After that I'm putting the Deadpool movies, if you view them as part of this franchise. In terms of my overall enjoyment of the movie, I did like it. I didn't love it, I didn't think it's the funniest ever or something like that. Some people really praise this movie as the bestest ever. I'm not sure I would go that far. It is entertaining, however it kind of lacks realism, because of that whole thing of breaking the fourth wall, which is fun, it's entertaining, but it does kind of break the believability, it breaks the suspension of disbelief. So I kind of look at it as a comedy movie, not so much as a serious. It doesn't have a serious story like those other X-Men movies. And I think Deadpool 2 is slightly better than 1. It had more action, it had cool stuff like Juggernaut done properly this time, and that's why I'm putting Deadpool 2 higher than Deadpool 1. And after that I'm putting X-Men Apocalypse, which I didn't hate. I did enjoy the movie. It did have a lot of fun, interesting, epic stuff going on. It had a good Quicksilver scene of him saving everybody from that explosion, so that was cool. So it had a lot of good special effects. I think people hated that because they kind of destroyed the villain Apocalypse, who was supposed to be an awesome villain, and they totally changed him in the movie, so that's a negative. However, I still think the movie overall, it kind of works. The movie overall is kind of okay. I did like how all the X-Men joined forces in the end. All of them used their powers, all of them working together to defeat a bigger villain, so that was fun. So that's why I'm okay with it. I didn't hate this movie, and that's why I'm putting it after Deadpool. And after that I'm putting the Wolverine, the one about him going to Japan, which also I think was an okay movie. I didn't think it was great. It had some silly moments as well. That whole final battle against that robot samurai, that was a little bit silly, and he lost his powers for most of the movies, so it wasn't as epic as all the other movies. He wasn't fighting as big of a villain, and all the other X-Men characters were missing, so it didn't really feel like an X-Men movie. It was a Wolverine movie, so it was less fun overall. I think X-Men are good movies mostly because of that whole team effort of multiple characters working together, a whole team of people, and it was totally missing here. He did have that sidekick lady, And the movie did have a bunch of cool scenes, like the train fight scene, the nuclear explosion at the beginning, some neat sword fights with Wolverine. So the movie did have a lot of fun moments. So it was a fun movie overall, but I can't really call it great. So I think I'm putting this below Apocalypse actually, just based on pure overall entertainment. And after that, I'm putting X-Men The Last Stand, which I really hated when it came out because it was so much less of a quality than the first two X-Men movies. It just totally a drop in quality in almost everything, and so I remember how disappointed I was by this movie. I expected something so much greater and was really disappointed, but looking back, the movie did have some entertainment value as well. It did have a bunch of very neat scenes, the Golden Gate Bridge scene, some of the other action scenes, the whole parts with Jean Grey actually were not that bad, the whole thing about her kind of going crazy, and that scene of her trying to tempt Wolverine, and all kinds of scenes were really well done actually. The plot was kind of weak. They didn't really do anything with the whole Dark Phoenix story, so it was just a subplot which didn't really go anywhere. You could take it out of the movie, it wouldn't really change anything in the bigger story. And the movie did have some interesting moral question, the whole thing about the cure, and Magneto wanted to kill a child to prevent it, so that makes him the villain, I guess. That's why they wanted to protect him. So the movie at least had some kind of story that you can talk about. It just all felt a little bit weak, and also the movie had a whole bunch of silly mutants who were kind of laughable. Like there was the mutant who can become from fat to thin in 2 seconds, so he makes a transformation in 2 seconds, that's his power. And the one with the spikes, who is kind of useless, so he has to hug someone to kill him. So the movie had a whole bunch of mutants which are pathetic. So it's like the movie ran out of ideas, and then they decided to kill off a whole bunch of characters for no reason. So that also kind of made it all a depressing movie. You killed off everybody. So it was kind of a stupid movie, but it still had some entertaining moments, some entertaining action scenes, and so on. And after this movie, I'm putting X-Men Origins Wolverine, which was a very bad movie, but it was so bad it's good. Like it had so many ridiculous and badly done scenes, but they were so bad they were funny unintentionally. And so that's why I still kind of enjoyed this movie, even though I fully admit it's terrible in its execution, it's terrible in its script, it's terrible in its special effects even, but it's so bad it's good. It's laughable in a good way. And also this movie probably created the most continuity issues. It totally contradicted so many things that were established in the first movies, and this was supposed to be a prequel, and yet they totally messed it up. That was really annoying in my opinion. The whole backstory with Stryker, a whole bunch of continuity mistakes. It doesn't fit the other movies, so that was very annoying, I remember. But looking back, I just look at it as a comedy movie, and then it's fine. And at least it was never boring. Like I don't remember any part of this movie being like I'm falling asleep in this movie, because something kept happening all the time. Even if it was something ridiculous and stupid and badly done, it was still never boring. And so that honor falls to the worst X-Men movie, which is Dark Phoenix, which was simply a boring movie. It was bad, but not so bad it's good. It was not unintentional comedy, it was just bad and boring. It was just nothing was happening. It's almost a non-existing story of the movie. It had no real plot. It had no character development of any kind of any of the characters. Everything felt pointless, no tension at all, you don't care about anything, you fall asleep in this movie. So that's why, in my opinion, this is the worst X-Men movie, and I made a whole review just on that movie, in which I explained why I think it's the worst X-Men movie. So that's it. So this is my ranking of all the X-Men movies. This is all in my opinion, of course. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss it, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.